Welcome back to the RV Shenanigans Show. I'm Ryan.
I'm Lauren, and together we are Millers in Motion. We sold a ranch in Texas and are enjoying many new adventures on the road in our Alliance Valor toy hauler.
And we have a very near and dear to our heart topic this week. We're going to talk about RVing with dogs.
It's also one of your most common questions is how do we do this?
And on our YouTube video that we shot over a year and a half ago now, we still get a couple of comments a week on that one just asking, because we started off with a crazy amount of fluff and now we're to a reasonably manageable amount of fluff.
Disagree. It is not manageable. We don't have any control over this. But in short, we actually started with 3 large dogs, and now we are down, sadly, to 2 large dogs.
Yeah, in fact, let's just get right into it. So the biggest question that we got, especially after the 3 large dogs in an RV video we did, was why?
Because it's fun.
I was going to say, do you want to take an actual crack at that?
No, but legitimately it is. It's so much fun. It's fun for us to have the companionship on the road. And, you know, when we're here in the rig, it's fun for us to watch them explore new places. And it gets us out exploring ourselves.
And I will tell you, we're going to touch base on a lot of different topics in this video about RVing with dogs. We're going to give you our kind of history with it and our dogs and kind of a little bit of a back history there. How many we have, how many we had, because we've been through a few iterations. We've also had 2 different RVs now with dogs. We're also going to talk about kind of some of the products we use to help make it work, as well as some of our kind of medical care things that we do with them. Just like you would go see a doctor for yourself, they obviously every once in a while need to go see a vet. So we're going to kind of encompass all of that. But we started off in our solitude with 3 dogs. You want to tell them who they were?
We had Klondike. He was over 100 pounds, a red Siberian Husky. He was beautiful and had a personality as large as his weight. We also have Bailey, a chocolate lab, who unfortunately approaches also 100 pounds, and the vet says we need to work on that.
She's less now.
Oh, yeah, we're down to like 90, I'm sure. And then we have Mishka. She's a rescue Samoyed who's about 60 pounds, and she is by far the fluffiest.
So about a year ago now, right about a year ago, a little more, we unfortunately lost Klondike.
Yeah.
So he had a form of canine cancer. Speaking of dogs, I saw dog hair just float from up here to down here.
That happens all the time.
And it's a topic we're going to talk about. But yeah, unfortunately, he had a form of canine cancer that just was on a pretty steady growth pace. And unfortunately, the surgery for him would have been too much at his age. And so we did unfortunately lose him. But we still have Mishka and Bailey, who are staring at us through our toy hauler window. Well, staring at me. You can't really see them.
They had to be locked away because they are not known to behave while we're trying to work.
And by not known to behave is pretty much a guarantee they're going to run into the camera, which is over there, or make a ton of noise because they'll sleep all day. The second we pick anything up, they wrestle.
Absolutely.
So let's go right into the 3 big dogs. What were we thinking?
I don't know. No. We've always had big dogs, and we had big dogs in tiny apartments in Austin. We had big dogs when we had a ranch with acreage. And so moving into this next season of life, it was just natural for us to bring our big dogs.
It was, and we were at our ranch, and at the time we started this process, we actually had 2. We started off with Bailey. Well, so Klondike, he wasn't one of our OGs, but he was with the OGs. He was a late add to the original 2 that we got when we got married. And then Mishka kind of found her way to us.
Weaseled her way in. Like I say, she was a rescue. And so long story short, she found us and never left.
Yeah, and we found her. Lauren found her, really. Lauren came home from work one day, and she was running around the neighborhood. Long story short, she grabbed Bailey, because dogs run the dogs, came up to her, got her back to the owners, and I'm using air quotes if you're not watching this, because they were fostering her from a bad situation.
And had apparently lost control.
Yeah, and they had smaller dogs, and so we found out through the pipeline that they were going to surrender her. And unfortunately, because of previous situations, and if you meet us in real life, we'll be happy to talk about it. We're just not going to do it here. She was a little, what's the best, feral?
I think feral is very appropriate for that dog. Yes, and so she had a lot of training and a lot of manners to go through.
Yeah. So we started that process. We made sure that she wasn't going to, kill us all in our sleep, including the other 2 dogs.
And he says that jokingly because she's the smartest dog we've ever had. It is wicked.
And we had a husky first, Goosey, that was incredibly smart, and Mishka outraces her pretty good in the IQ department. So, and that's how we acquired our 3rd dog. So we never actually were planning on going into full-time RV life with 3 dogs. It's just kind of how it all shook out at the end of the day.
But hey, such is life, right? You roll with it.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about especially our time with the 3 dogs, because the biggest question we get on that video is, how do we find RV parks that take us? We've both booked RV stays. We kind of split that role for us. And when we had 3 dogs, I never encountered an actual problem.
I didn't either. So some of the RV parks will have breed restrictions. And believe it or not, Klondike, the big sweet potato that he was, being a husky, was on a lot of those lists.
Right.
And so sometimes if you call and just say, hey, he's 10 years old and can't even make it up the stairs, like he's not a flight risk, he's not aggressive, this and that, they'll definitely work with you. The other thing was that some RV parks had a weight limit on their dogs. And I think ultimately that was because they didn't want to place breed restrictions. And so it's easier just to say no big dogs.
Even though most small dogs are just as aggressive as big dogs.
Yeah. So, and again, I called them and I said, hey, we have a chonky little lab and we have a fluffy marshmallow of a dog. And they said, oh, yeah, that'll be fine. Don't worry about it.
Right.
And so I think that if you call, sometimes it may be negotiable a little bit. Don't expect that. But
I was going to say, a lot of times, like there's the running joke in business school of like, you get the degree just so you can get the interview. At the end of the day, especially a business degree, I get with what you do, it's super important.
Yeah, different story.
But in a business degree, you really are just looking for the interview so you can get the job.
Right.
It's kind of the same thing. Like they put those rules on breed restriction stuff up there. If they're ever in doubt, call them. But when we would filter like RV parks when we're searching, whether it was through RV Life, Campendium, any of those, apps or anything, we always just put exactly what we had. We had 3 large size dogs and it would filter it out. And so if we found one that said, oh, you only have a 2-dog max, we'd look around. If there's nothing else and we like that park, we'd call them and just say, hey, we're only staying for a couple of nights. We're staying for a week, whatever our duration was going to be. Typically, they're willing to work with you.
Technically, the camping ground we're at now, which we've been at for an extended time, had a 2-dog limit.
Right. But again, it's one of those that as long as you give them a call and talk to them, and we've used this as our kind of on again, off again site for a year and a half now. Not this site specifically. We bounce around in the park every time we leave and come back. But yeah, just communicate. I think that's the biggest thing is don't just read everything as it is on the website or rule sheet or wherever you're reading it and say this is the way it has to be.
And I would say the flip side also goes that if there is 0 information on their website or your booking, and if you're talking to somebody on the phone, it might be worth saying, hey, we've got 2 big dogs, just making sure that's cool.
Yeah, kind of set expectations, just like you want them to set expectations. If you're coming in with something a little different, you want to set your expectations as well. You don't want to get there and go, oh, I didn't realize dogs weren't allowed, my bad.
Yeah.
You roll up, there's a sign when you pull in going, uh-oh.
Well, and I will also say we preface everything with our dogs have traveled for over a year now. They are well behaved. They are up to date on all their vet and everything. So they don't know that they have, MMA wrestling inside the RV every day. But they're well behaved to the neighbors.
Yeah. And if you ever hear them wrestling, you can hear it. And so, because I've walked up before and they're playing or something, like after we've come back and I went outside to take trash out or something random, come back and you can hear them wrestling because you just hear, imagine walking around really heavy on your heels and then do it a lot more. That's pretty much what's happening. So, okay, so continuing the 3-dog theme, how did we actually travel with those 3 dogs?
Yes, we put them inside the truck like they are our children. We accept nothing less.
Please don't. I know some people do this because it's come up. Please don't put animals or people in the trailer while you're driving. It's actually legal in most states. I believe maybe all of them. I'm not 100% sure, but it's super unsafe. Don't do that. Just bring them in the truck with you.
Now they don't get seat belts. We're not that far, but they do have this dog like hammock thing, and it's basically a seat protector. We fold the seats up in the back of the truck, and we have a protector to keep the seats from getting damaged and snotted on and drooled on and things. Anyways, and then they have the whole back seat to themselves.
Pretty much.
They do great on the road.
There's two types of those hammocks. There's one that just goes to the seat and then up, so it kind of creates a little bit extra room. So if you need to be able to put stuff in the back seat, you can do that. Because our dogs are so big, we were worried they'd snap it or like break our seats or something. So we did one because we have a 2019 Ford F350. The back seat goes all the way up and there's no framing, so we could go all the way to the ground, which is what we typically do. So there's the two sides of hammocks, the one that goes all the way down and one goes up. We use the one that goes all the way down, and we actually both have one. So Lauren has a F-150. I have an F-350. When we're on the road all the time, you don't necessarily take your truck.
Right.
But we kind of got two different sizes or two different types. Yours doesn't have sides. So like where the doors are, mine does. So I can actually zip up the sides, which I like because then I can open the door without worrying about them kind of rushing out. And I can, like if we're a long haul, we'll take their collars and leashes off so they can be a little more comfortable and not get tangled on themselves. We'll take those off. Well, if we have that up, they can't just bum rush the door. We can kind of get them on. Then we can let them out via the zipper on that thing.
And on the road, we found that most of the stops we make are pretty pet friendly as well. So we stop at a lot of Loves so we can use our open roads card and go through the truck lanes. And a lot of those now will have a little doggy park or at least a nice grassy area where we can let them out.
Yeah, just like a lot of the RV parks do too. So is there anything else that encompasses all three dogs that we need to talk about?
No, I think that about covers all three.
And we RV'd for about 6 months, 5 months, something like that with all three until we did unfortunately lose Klondike. So we have some experience with that. I can tell you right now, when we did travel in the truck, it get a little tight.
It was, well, and they were cranky like children too.
Right. We had about a 2 or 3 hour max before they started to push buttons, and Mishka was learning her place in our little pack, and Klondike was very much so our alpha. And so I remember we were going to New Braunfels from Dallas-Fort Worth, which is about a 3.5 hour drive.
Shouldn't be this far.
No. I can tell you we hit Austin and they were about done. I know we had to stop once or twice just to let them out because they were starting to get each other's throats a little bit. So just be aware of it. Just like kids, you don't want to keep them in there too long, especially if they're in a confined space for larger dogs. So like for us with the 3, it was a little bit too much. Now, if we were doing a horse show, we'd split them up.
Right. That made it a lot easier.
When we do horse shows, Lauren would take her truck and then tow the horse trailer. So I would either send Bailey and Mishka with her or Klondike, one of the two, and then I would take the other one or two, depending on how we did that. So, okay. So let's get into all the stuff. What makes all of this go around semi-sane?
So I think attitude has a lot to do with it, right?
Does.
That if you expect it to be fun and successful, that it will be. And if you expect them to be in the way and a pain and everything, then it will be. So we really enjoy this. And I think that that's our attitude towards it.
Yeah.
And we just find things that make that successful.
Well, and it's exciting when you see a new thing or go to a new place to have, I mean, I consider them some of our best friends, which, not to downgrade our actual best friends, like human best friends, but like I love going places with Bailey. She likes seeing things. And so they are very much so kind of like our furry kids. And it's fun to be able to take them places. And RVing has just made that bigger and better.
And Bailey and Ryan are also very sociable, and together they are unstoppable.
Wow. Really?
It's true.
When you said unstoppable, I'm just imagining your T-Rex t-shirt with the little things coming out. So I'm doing that and Bailey's jumping.
Jumping, yes. Very, very happy.
So we talked a little bit about the hammock in the truck. There's not a lot else that we really use in there. The only thing I'll tell you is for long hauls, just have a couple of things on hand. Poo-poo bags.
Be a decent human. Pick up after your pet.
Yeah, and if you don't, go ahead and turn it off. You're not going to like me in a second. In all seriousness, just pick up. I've stepped in so much dog crap in dog parks and just in random places. It's not that hard. You own a pet. That's part of it. If you didn't want to do that, don't own a pet.
Also travel with some water because they don't really like to go all day without having a little bit of a drink here and there.
Yeah, we typically will bring a bottle of water or two from the coach down with us, and then we'll grab something to give them a drink with. If we are stopping somewhere and we go in to get food from there instead of from our RV. Typically, we'll also grab a bottle of water, whatever's just cheapest, like a purified water for them, so that they can get a quick drink as well. So, and just remember to stop. I mean, when you're route planning, think about that. They're just like people; they can't go all day without going to the bathroom and getting the things they need. So, if you get out of the truck at a rest stop, take the dog with you.
Well, maybe not inside.
Well, not inside, but they let them go to the bathroom too. In fact, we were coming back from Tennessee, and I don't remember what state we were in, but we stopped, and they had the greatest dog rest stop of all time.
Ever. There were obstacles and all kinds of fun things, and it was huge.
Yeah, it was. It was a huge. It almost was, I would guess, about a half acre of actual fenced dog area, and they had an agility course, and it was awesome. Dog stations everywhere, and I say dog station, like poop pickup stations.
I couldn't believe there wasn't anybody else there. How are we the only ones with dogs using that?
We're knocking on wood because typically it's the other way around, and it can be a little overwhelming sometimes having that many dogs in one spot, especially if you're like 10 minutes and we're out, and then you never catch them for 45. But as far as the truck goes, that's really about it. So something that we use, especially on travel days, we typically use it all the time, but we definitely use it on travel days, especially on Mishka because she's our escape artist, is a GPS collar. Now,
we've actually compared a couple of these. We had a different one, a whistle, for a while, and we just had a couple of issues with the app. It wasn't that the unit itself didn't work; it was that the app didn't work
specifically
when
on
we
my
needed
phone.
it to. So there was one time that she escaped, and she's a flight risk. We knew that. We try our best, but things happen. And when he went to pull up the app, it needed updates, and it kept giving him alerts and notifications and things. And it was like, we're just trying to get to the fact that we need to find the dog.
Right. And I knew where she was. I just wanted to make sure because she had bolted out of the door. This is before we ever had moved into the RV. We owned it already, but we were still at the ranch. And she did what she does sometimes, and the door opened and she flew out, and I watched where she ran. I kept an eye on her, but every time I went to get the app, like Lauren said, it would freeze. It just wouldn't update right. If those types of apps are going to update, they need to do a hard update where it's like, it still works, but
Exactly.
you need to update it. And for 10 minutes, I kind of walked and kept my eye on her, and I lost her a couple of times. Luckily, I picked her back up because she's normally just chasing birds or something. And it just wouldn't open. So we ended up switching after that subscription ran out. I just did a better job of making sure my app was updated all the time, to Tractive.
Yes, that's what
We've actually really liked so far. Mm-hmm. And we've had it for coming up on a year, I think.
Thank goodness we also haven't had any incidents where she bolts necessarily. There were a couple of scares when some squirrels came into play, but other than that, we haven't really had to use it in an emergency, but we have tested it where we pull the app up to make sure.
Well, and it's handy because Lauren and I both will have a login for the app, and so if Mishka were to leave, so like around our RV, we would put a virtual fence up. Now, it's not an actual fence. That's not a shock collar by any means. It's not going to keep them inside. It's just notifications only. So if she leaves that perimeter that we've set, we get a push notification on our cell phone and sometimes a text message depending on the scenario. But if she's with you and your phone knows you go, it'll actually go, Mishka has left with Lauren. So I know that like if I'm out of town or somewhere else that they went on a walk essentially because they're together.
So talk about it needs some internet connection in order to function, right?
Yeah. Well, your phone's going to have it automatically. So there's two different ways that the collar actually works. So it is a subscription-based thing. So it does utilize a cellular network. I couldn't tell you which one if my life depended on it. It might be Verizon.
That's what I was thinking.
I'm guessing a little bit there. And they may switch. Who knows? But it does need a cellular connection. That's how it pings back. It will, if the cell connection doesn't work, it will ping a GPS as well. It just can't ping as often. So without the cell. So you get a ping every minute, essentially, instead of like a constant live update. And so you can still see where she is, but you're going to have to get close enough. Now, if you get close enough to it, it does also connect to your phone via Bluetooth. So if you get within whatever Bluetooth range is, it will pick it back up and then it'll go back to live. So there's a bunch of different little fail-safes built into it, which is another reason why I liked it so much.
Right. But if we're in a place with zero cell signal, like when we were in the Smokies and there was nothing, we may encounter a little bit of an issue.
Yeah, it does ping the GPS. And so it's as good as you're going to get without spending a ridiculous amount for an actual like person live GPS tracker from Garmin or something like
exactly.
that. Which you're talking, a lot of money.
A lot more than we spent.
Right. And so it's as close as we got to have a peace of mind knowing that if she were to get out, we can find her. One of the things I really liked about it too, that the other one didn't have, or at least if it did have it, it wasn't as good. It has a strobe light on it. So if it happens to be dark outside, night, those types of things, you can actually turn that on and you can try and pick that up. Now, Mishka's so dang fluffy. I'm not sure that would help a whole lot, but she's also white, so maybe it'll reflect like a light bulb or something off of her. But yeah, there's that too. So you are able to do that. It can also play a noise. I've never tested that because it seems a little mean, but if it does ping, you can hear it. And so it's all emergency based stuff. It's not designed to do all that all the time because you're just going to tick the dog off and probably other people. But it's the most encompassing thing we've found in a reasonable price range.
Yes, agreed.
And there are other products out there. We were actually approached by one, and I'm not really going to talk about what it was because I kind of fundamentally disagree with it. But essentially, they were creating a virtual fence for your dog. So think about like a buried fence line. They wear a collar, so you don't have to have an actual fence kind of a deal. That, but it's virtual. To me, my worry with something like that is in an RV park, you're going to have people that just start letting their dogs outside because they're staying in their fence. It's like, well, the second that you lose cell service, didn't charge the collar, all these other things. And I'll be honest, and we're going to get into leash rules and all the other stuff in a little bit, but that to me promotes that way too bad. So
agreed. Yeah.
Okay. So outside of the tractive, what's your next big ticket thing couldn't live without for the dogs?
I know this may sound a little practical, and I know I'm painfully practical. Sorry, guys. Is the entry mat when we come into the house? Well, come into the rig.
I was gonna pick the water bowl. So,
so we have this like gorilla mat thing that we found on Amazon. It took a couple tries, but we love this thing.
So this started with, if you ever like this thumbing through Facebook or something, and thanks to good old Siri or whoever listens to all your conversations, and you go, we need an entry mat so we can try and collect some of the dog stuff. There's a thing called a muddy mat. Well, the muddy mats are incredibly expensive. Like the size we have would be well over $100 for this thing. And all it is it's an absorption mat is all it really is. So we got on Amazon like everybody else, went, cool, where's the cheap knockoff? And we found this one by Gorilla. And yes, it's the same people that make glue.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they have more stuff than you realize because the back of it's a non-slip, and that's part of their adhesive lines. That's not actually an adhesive. It's just like a rubber. And that thing hardly moves.
I agree with that.
You have to get underneath it for it to move.
Mm-hmm. And it does. It grabs the water off of our feet. It grabs all the sand off of their feet.
Most.
A lot of it. I mean, a lot more.
Mishka's got pretty furry paws, so it doesn't necessarily always get hers, but it gets Bailey's really well. Bailey's typical lab. There's not a lot of fur going on down there. So
there's been some times where we'll say that a mat has been sacrificed by Mishka to the gods, I guess. And so we've been without one while Amazon is delivering it.
That's code for she ate it or chewed on it or played with it or any of the above. And it was no longer in a manner where it should be in a home.
And so we noticed a tremendous difference when we don't have that there.
So just to add on to that, for starters, they have a bunch of different colors. We went with the most fun we could find, gray. It just matches well. We honestly did want to bring a bunch of attention to the spot where everybody steps. We also added, the same company makes an outdoor version of the mat that's kind of rough. And if you wipe your feet on it, it helps get a lot of that initial stuff off. So we added that outside as well. And between those two things, as long as you reasonably like shake them out every once in a while, they do a phenomenal job. When we've lost the mat for like a few days at a time, we come back like, why is it so dirty in here?
It gets so dirty so fast without that.
Right. So that's one. I said it earlier. The water bowl. Our dogs go through so much water.
Imagine that. A lab likes the water.
Yeah, right. Well, she actually hates the water.
She really does. And Mishka's the one who plays in it.
Right. But just for drinking. So we have it's from the company called PetSafe. It's essentially a dog water bowl, but it's got a reservoir on top. I believe it holds about 2 gallons.
I was going to say 2-ish.
There's different sizes. We have the 2-gallon one. We had it at our house and loved it. And so we brought it with us. Now, in our previous coach, it sat outside, and so every time they needed a water, we would go outside, or we would just grab one of their food bowls, throw a little water in, and put it down. The downside of that was we had to go outside every time they wanted to drink a water, and if you've ever owned a dog, you know that's not once or twice a day.
But that's also leaving the water outside. And so maybe that means raccoons come up to it in the middle of the
Right.
night and set off your security cameras.
Yeah.
And when it gets hot, you can get like mold and things in there if you're not really, really on top of making sure it's cleaned out every time.
Since we've switched to the Alliance Valor toy hauler, we bought a kind of rubber food mat, really just to kind of keep the water contained because they slurp everywhere. And now it's in the toy hauler space. So it's actually out there. It's where they are right now, to kind of try and keep it quiet for the podcast recording. But that's where it lives now out there. And I don't know about you, but it's worked phenomenally well for us.
Great. It's perfect.
You're always, especially with bigger dogs that don't have any control, Bailey, you're always going to deal with a little bit of water everywhere. Just wipe it up.
Yeah, it's easy.
They're dogs.
Right. What do you expect?
Yeah, they're dogs. You're going to be cleaning up after them your entire life. That's just how it is.
So then the next product I would say that makes life more manageable, and everybody's going to have this to some degree in their rig, is a good vacuum. And so we have a Shark. It's a cordless thing. I don't even know the details on it. We had a Dyson and it was really good, but it mounted to the wall, and we didn't really want that in the new rig. So this one is standalone. And so, yeah, they're all cordless, like stick vacuum types. And yeah, what would we do without those?
Yeah, so this one supports itself. They're all the pet versions. I know in the Dyson, what we had in the previous coach was the V10 Pet.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which was the purple handled one. I don't know what makes it a pet versus not, except for
The marketing team?
yeah, pretty much. I guess I don't know. I will say I prefer the Dyson.
I thought the Dyson worked better, but I'm glad we don't have to stick this one on the wall.
I do, but I also think we could put with our pantry in here too, because there's an outlet in there. We could hide it in there if we really wanted to. So.
There you go. More mods and projects coming your way.
Yeah, 2 holes. But yeah, invest in a good vacuum, the one that comes with your coach. If you do have that one, if you have that rig that has that central vac system, I'd say it sucks, but in reality, it doesn't suck good enough.
No, we did try it, and it just didn't work for having the dogs and everything. So we opted to get an add-on.
I'm trying to think about any other things. I think the big thing too is just be aware of temperatures.
Absolutely.
So the next thing I'm going to throw in there is just a good dog bed that fits your needs. So because we have 2 dogs, we typically always have 2 dog beds. I know that sounds crazy because we have 2 big dogs and that's a lot of floor space. That's why we actually wanted the Valor 44 V14 so bad, was because that L-shaped sofa we have 0 use for, but where that L-shaped sofa did, had an idea.
Dog bed.
Pretty
And
much.
the caveat to this is that our dogs are also not allowed in our bed. So yes, we have 2 very nice
Allegedly.
dog bed. One of them got up there while we were gone, but that ended when we shut the door, as long as she doesn't learn how to open it. But anyways,
That's a terrifying thought, but okay.
that's why we had to change out the handle on the other one. She opened it.
We did. We had like the lever kind versus the knob,
And
we
she can open those
Yeah.
as long as the day is.
so we had to
yes.
switch to the knob.
Yes. So, yes, they do have nice dog beds, one for each of them, to make sure they're comfortable so that they're not on our bed.
Yeah, hypothetically, but they do have somewhere else to sleep too. So when the temperatures get a little cooler or something, they definitely have a spot. So
Yeah, particularly your sad lab. She gets cold, just like I do. But and then we have temperature monitoring within the rig. You've heard us talk about it several times. Our little Govee temperature and humidity sensors that will also ping to our phones, and so we can keep a close eye on things even when we're not here.
right. So something else I would tell you that you probably want to invest in if you're going to go RVing is a really good leash. And I say that in terms of every dog and every person has a different need when it comes to that. I know there's a lot of people that like the retractable ones, and that's perfectly fine if that's what you want. Our dogs are heathens, and they can't be trusted with those because they can outwork them.
There's a lot of people with heathens.
That's true. We particularly have ones we like. We found them at a horse show. I wish I could tell you where to get them.
They
but
don't have a brand on them.
No.
I've never seen them in a pet store.
I honestly think that so we go to horse shows with Lauren's horse, and they make something called a lead rope for horses. So horses wear halters, not when they're riding, but when they're being moved from point A to point B with control, not inside of a fence. A lead rope is the clip you see, and it's about a 4 to, length
yeah, 6
rope.
to 10 most of the time.
But it's a softer rope, so if they were to rear or do something, it's designed to where you can at least minimize the amount of rope burn you're about to get, because let's be honest, the horse is going to win if they start pulling. So someone, and I'm pretty sure it was just that tack manufacturer, retailer, whoever it was, I think it was Quail Hollow now that we're talking about it, but I think they just made some. And I don't know if they're 4-foot leads, but they were designed for dogs. But it's that same material, and they have lasted as long as nobody chews on them. I think we lost one to that.
We lost one to that. Mm-hmm.
But they've lasted. We've had them for well over a year now.
Maybe over 2.
Maybe.
When I bought the first one, because I don't think...
that was Gulfport, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was Gulfport. So I think that was 2 years.
Yep.
And yes, they're very durable. They have a handle, and they're a little bit shorter. We don't like a really long lead. I think you don't have quite as much control, and things can go wrong at the end of that.
Right.
So we try to keep them a little shorter. So this is probably 4 foot. But yeah, they've been fantastic. And if I ever find that tack shop again, I'm buying all of them.
I don't know about all of them, but we'll buy at least a backup for each dog.
So they were also cheap. You go to a
Right.
store nowadays and you can't get a leash for anything reasonable. I think these were under $10.
Oh, were they really?
Yes.
Never mind, buy them out.
I'm buying them all.
We have a new business. We're going to find these and we're going to retail them. They're only $39.99. Shipping is just as much. No, but seriously, find a good leash. Whatever that is for you. Just the only thing that I have ever asked is make sure that you can always maintain control when you looking at collars, leashes, all those different things.
And that kind of goes into a good topic, because if you're in different places, you don't know what's going to be out there.
Nope.
Maybe you open your door and there's somebody else's dog. Maybe you open the door and there's a deer. Who knows? Maybe you open the door and there's traffic. And so
A ghost.
A ghost.
Sorry, that's becoming a theme. If you didn't watch the last episode or listen to the last episode, that's a Friends reference. Just when we start talking about something, that normally comes up.
And so make sure that you always have control when those doors open. And I know that we're a little sensitive to it because of Mishka and because of her actions previously. But yes, so always try to have that just in case, because you really just don't know what's on the other side of that.
You don't.
So other things that we make traveling. Oh,
So sorry, I do want to bring up one last little topic that goes along with leashes, and it is a little more of a, I'm going to say, third rail topic.
oh boy.
Collars.
Okay.
So you're going to see all kinds of collars out there. You're going to see harnesses. You're going to see snout collars. You're going to see pronged metal collars. You're going to see what they're referred to as choker collars. They don't choke, by the way. If they're fit correctly and used correctly, they don't. And you're going to see standard nylon, typical what you see collars. So in full disclosure, and you probably see them in our videos, and I don't mind talking about it a little bit, but we actually use a pronged choker style collar on our dogs.
Oh, he just broke out the spoon to stir that pot.
Well, because I think there's a misunderstanding, to be completely honest with you. And I want to squash it as best I possibly can, because you have to understand how these things work before you complain about them. Like, I've seen plenty of dogs that have harnesses on, and I get that the harness isn't going to hurt the dog. You might dislocate your shoulder. But most dogs that I see that are in a harness are not in any sort of control.
No, and the same with just a plain nylon collar. If your dog's pulling on that, they can choke themselves doing that.
And I will say that, because you're still putting pressure on, I guess it's the doggy esophagus.
Well, and then you can hear them just breathing into it like they're struggling.
So one thing about why we use the colors we do is because typically we have bigger dogs that in some scenarios, Klondike was stronger than us.
Well, and if I walk 2 of them, there's a good chance they're going to outweigh me.
Right.
And so if they see a squirrel and, there's 160 pounds of dog that want to chase the squirrel, I'm toast.
Right. And so, but Klondike, when he was in his prime, could drag me around. And
he did frequently, me on the floor.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm 6'2", 275-ish. We're going to leave that ish in there.
Kind of like Bailey-ish.
Yeah. I'm around that ballpark. I'm close enough to it. Don't worry about it. But when you do that, and how we use it too, if you notice, like, we're never always at tension with them.
No, never.
The only time we would ever get the tension is they're doing something we don't ask, and you bump them. You don't just rear back as hard as you possibly can. And for us, if you're watching the video, you're going to see me do it. But we do is we typically roll our wrist back, and it's literally like a 1 link difference.
Yeah, it's not much. And, we have a couple of sayings in the horse world. He's going to cough up a lung right quick. So we have a couple of sayings in the horse world, and one of them is use as much force as necessary, but as little as required. So if you can be soft, do that. And that's what we actually aim to do, is for the most part of the time, we want to be soft and not having any restriction on them at all.
Well, and I think it's important to understand that we both have trained horses, you more than me, but I trained Chief, and we've both trained dogs. And it's any good dog trainer, and I'm pretty sure like the Cesar Milans of the world would agree with this, it's always the release of pressure you're looking for.
Always.
It's never the actual pressure. You want that pressure to be on as little as physically possible.
That's the other thing that I was going to say is that a tool is only as good as the hands that are using it.
Correct.
And so, you can give me a scalpel and I can use it because I have practice in medicine and a degree to do that. But if we give that to my 18-year-old little sister,
I was going to say, I can carve a mean pumpkin.
She may not have the same technique that I do, so just kind of factor that
We
in.
barely give her a fork.
Be nice. We love her. We absolutely love her.
So yeah, and that's why I don't want to shy away from those types of topics, because I do think misunderstanding them is part of that. We've got a couple sets of friends that have aggressive breeds, and I'm using air quotes again. If you're not watching this, you're listening to this on whatever podcast platform you listen to, because Chris and Martha have Callie,
A Rottweiler.
And then you've got Lawrence and Natalie from Brazen Brits, and they've got Dobermans.
And
Plural,
Lindsay
I
and
believe.
Lonnie have pit bulls, and these have been fantastic family dogs. They're so sweet. We've met them.
Now, do those dogs have a hereditary kind of drive in them that's a little different? So do German Shepherds. My first dog, Maverick, was a mix, but mostly German Shepherd.
Yeah.
And they do. But as long as you understand that and you train appropriately, they're perfectly fine. Callie's one of the sweetest dogs I've ever met.
She's so sweet. Yeah.
In fact, don't tell Chris and Martha. We really just go see them for her. I'm just kidding.
Well, and Lindsay and Lonnie have two small children with their pit bulls.
Right.
And they
They
had
have kids? I'm just kidding.
They had two dogs at one point.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think that any dog can be a good dog depending on a variety of factors. So don't judge a book by its cover. If you have any questions, please come talk to us.
Sure.
And if you think that our dogs are terrified or don't like their collars, I shall video whenever we get them out to go for a walk.
Right.
They leap in the air with joy because they're so excited.
Now, I will say, when they wear their attractive collars, they wear their collars all the time. So they have a nylon tractive collar.
Right.
That stays on. And when we go on walks or do things, we add this other collar. So they're technically wearing two collars when we go out for like walks and that kind
But
of
the
stuff.
leash isn't attached to both.
No, it's just attached to the one. But we do that because so the tractive can stay on them. And I do get it. That's why I mentioned earlier when we were talking about the dog hammocks in the truck, how we take their collars off of them. We don't take the tractive collar off of them.
No.
We only take the training collar off of them or the restriction collar off of them so that they can be more comfortable. We're not trying to put them in any sort of pain. We just want them to not run away and get hit by a car or drag us in front of a car. That would hurt too. So, okay. I don't remember what we were talking about now that I'm off my soapbox.
Oh, squirrel, such is life again. All right, let's move on to health then.
Okay.
So let's start with their dog food. That's something to kind of pay attention to. If you stay in one place, then maybe you can keep the same supplier and the same food and things like that. But when you travel like we do, we kind of need something that's nationally available. And so
not
what
$7,000.
Oh, yeah, that too. And so, like, you can get Chewy. The website will deliver food, and I think that it's actually free. So that's one consideration.
The delivery, not the food.
Well, yeah. Like a local PetSmart or Petco, something that's available through them. Or we actually feed a good dog food through Costco that we found.
So at the end of the day, look at the ingredients. And I know there's a bunch of different people that do that. I've heard other people feed their dogs raw. Which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. We just don't have the physical room or the want to get another fridge, essentially, to store all that because our dogs go through some serious amounts of food. So we use Kirkland Costco brand. So we're kind of subject to where there's Costco's. There's Costco's a lot of places. We do have to think ahead a little bit about that. Also, if you leave a bag of dog food in the back of your truck and it rains, it can mold. Opened up a brand new bag of dog food after picking up this RV actually up in Indiana, and yeah, it was moldy. So we threw that away.
So yes, double check that.
But when we first started RVing, we were using a brand that we found at a feed store in Texas. But that brand's not as readily available.
Right.
And we didn't realize that till we really kind of got on the road a little bit when we can't find their food anywhere.
And as you know, whenever you change a dog's food, you should do it kind of slowly and gradually. Otherwise, you can really upset their stomach.
You mean not when you run out like we did?
And 350 pounds of upset dog stomach doesn't go well in an RV. So we've learned our lesson and we will find a nationally available brand.
And that's what we've done. So I will say we've had to get different types of that brand. In fact, last time Costco's notorious for like, we have it. And then they don't for like a month. And then they do have it again. But if typically, as long as you keep the ingredients really close and it's the same manufacturing process, i.e. the same brand, same that kind of stuff, you're normally okay. We switched one bag. They were perfectly fine. I think Mishka liked it better. And then we went right back as soon as they had it in stock.
And we store it in an airtight container back in the toy hauler space and don't have any issues with that. So other little health things, every day we give them a dental treat with some toothpaste on it, help keep their teeth nice and healthy. And that's also their little treat. But also they go to the vet every year, just like we need to go to the doctor every year. Did you hear that, Ryan? We need to go to the doctor every year for a wellness exam.
Does this thing on the back of my arm not count?
No,
Okay.
it does not.
So with that being said, just like how if you full-time, this kind of pertains to people that legitimately full-time and travel all the time, but you know how if you're gone for over a year, at some point throughout that year, you have to come back to wherever your doctors are and schedule a bunch of that stuff. For me, it's like going to the eye doctor, the medical doctor for you, dentist, all that stuff. They do the same thing. They need to stay up to date on their shots. I can tell you, you're not taking them anywhere, and most RV parks are going to require the immunizations.
Right, your basic stuff.
They're taking your word for it. I'm not going to lie. Not a lot of people have asked us for anything, but I also don't want to subject any other dogs potentially to risk, and that's part of pet ownership. It's not always about your pet.
Exactly.
So the other thing that we always try to do is be very aware of where a emergency vet would be. In other words, a 24-hour clinic. Just like if we were to have an issue or something and we need to go to an ER, it's pretty easy to find an ER, but emergency vets aren't quite as easy.
Right. And so, yes, I know it's a quick Google search, but just always kind of be cognizant of that and how far away that is.
Right.
Because if your search reveals that that's 3 hours away because you're somewhere pretty remote, I mean, that's a big issue.
Right. Be aware. I mean, just understand. So especially if you're going to be somewhere for an extended period of time, just really know where you're going to be. If you're only somewhere for about a week, means that big of a deal? Probably not, because you're going to probably move on. But it's the one time you wish you had known.
It's not until it is, right?
Right. And so we always kind of do a little bit of due diligence. Are we great about it? No, especially when we're in transit. But like we know, when we've said it out loud, we're going to be in Florida for an extended period of time. And I kind of have an idea of a few vets that are down there now because I just Google searched it real fast.
And that's also probably worth a discussion with your regular routine vet is, hey, we're going to be on the road. What are some things we could have with us that make a bad situation a little bit less bad? Maybe there's something for vomiting, something for diarrhea, something like that.
Well, and on top of that, if your dog does have to take a medicine, Bailey, make sure you have an adequate supply as long as you can have an adequate supply. Some things are going to be restricted where you can only get so much of it. But your doctor may be more willing to give you a one refill kind of a thing. Even if you can't have them both at the same time, at least you have it versus not, because he knows you're not going to be back.
Right. And because you have a good relationship and you're proven to be compliant with their recommendations.
Right.
So one other thing on health before we move on is that our dogs also get flea, tick, and heartworm like prevention type stuff. And that goes back to you don't know where you're going to be. You don't know what you're going to be exposed to. So they are on the kind of the medicine that goes on their backs for flea and tick. I think it's called Frontline, maybe. I could be wrong on that. I just click repeat whenever I order it off of Amazon.
Oh, that's an Amazon thing? I thought that was Chewy.
Well, whoever has it at the better price when I order and whoever can get it to us. So that goes on once a month. And so that repels and kills. So we're good on that. And then they have their heartworm prevention because that's transmitted by flies that bite. And if we're in a place with a lot of flies, well, there's a risk.
Right. So this next section, assuming there's nothing else health-wise.
Nothing else I can think of.
So this next section we're just going to call random animal stuff.
This is how his brain works. Are you ready? This is like rapid fire section.
Well, it's not necessarily rapid fire, but there's a handful of things that don't really fall into a category of health or anything else. And then the first one I want to talk about is just be aware of your surroundings. I know that kind of goes without saying, and we mentioned it earlier as far as understand what's on the other side of the door before you open it. But, this probably obtains to boondockers probably more than most people in RV parks, because in RV parks it's pretty self-explanatory. But if you're boondocking out in West Texas in the summer, what's notorious in West Texas in the summer that can hurt you and your dogs?
Rattlesnakes.
Bingo. So just be aware of that so that you're looking in the right things. Scorpions is another thing out there.
Yeah.
And so if you have a tendency to leave like shoes outside or anything along those lines, just be aware and don't put yourself or your dog into any situation that you don't have at least most of the control in.
You weren't there this morning, but Mishka actually did go after a copperhead in the dog park at an RV park we were at.
again?
No, just the once, but
Oh.
since you weren't there, and
I thought you meant this morning. I was like, really? It's cold. How are there copperheads out?
No. And so this was a couple months ago, and it was dark, and I overlooked it. It was reddish brownish in color, and I just thought somebody hadn't picked up after their dog. And it was really early, and
That's
I wasn't
really big
quite
turd.
awake until the turd moved.
Well, and that's another good point, like being aware of that. But like, so most dog parks have a main entrance that's typically double gated, and then you're going to have a service entrance that's bigger, i.e., where the mowers can get in. And the park we're in now, there's a few people that I get why they go in the service entrance. It's a lot easier for them, but sometimes they don't close the gate. When we're leaving a dog park and there's nobody else in there and it's just us, we leave the gate open here simply because it's kind of to let other people know there's no one in there. This dog park, we typically all kind of let our dogs, it's not very big. And so everybody lets their own dogs do their own thing. And so not a lot of dogs get in there together.
Right. There's not a lot of group playtime.
Right. And so that's kind of how we all signal to each other nobody's in there is we just leave the gate open. And so that's how we can know, like, without having to walk all the way to it, like, oh, there's nobody in there, the gate's open. And so the problem with that on the service entrance side is you get in there and you think everything's hunky-dory. And the service gate's open. We got really lucky one morning because that gate was wide open.
Wide open.
And we were not away. It was early. And it was not light. Yeah, it was before daylight savings time kicked in or kicked out or whatever version of it we're in now. And luckily you saw it and before the dogs even did because we had been in there for a few minutes.
Yeah, I didn't even say anything to you because I didn't want to draw attention to it. I just ran over there right quick to try to
And then I tried to understand what was happening. So just be aware of your surroundings, whether it's trying to avoid rattlesnakes or copperheads or whatever else, or make sure all the gates are closed before you unleash your dogs.
I guess the other thing is that as a complete fail-safe, our dogs are also microchipped. So if the collar doesn't work and the gates are open and all hell breaks loose, they are microchipped and they can always reach us via that.
I understand you do have to register that microchip. Just stick it in there
Absolutely.
doesn't do anything. You do have to register it with your information.
Very true. And you need to keep that up to date with your current cell phone number and all that good stuff. So, all right.
What else random stuff you got?
I don't think I have anything else. I think that wraps up how we travel with dogs. Not sure we appropriately discussed why, but we love our dogs
Talk
and we
about
have
why.
we have a lot of fun with them.
So I will say there is one topic I want to talk about because I think it's the most important one. And it by far is my most, even more than collars.
And picking up dog poop.
Oh no, it's picking up dog poop.
Oh, okay.
Because we never really talked about it. We
Oh
just
boy,
kinda,
we're coming back to this.
Yeah. So please, for the love of everything that is holy, pick up after your dog. I don't know how else to say that besides please pick up after your dog. Poop of any kind can carry diseases and flies get on it and all these other things. I think it's incredibly disrespectful to not pick up after your dog.
And not having a bag is not an excuse.
Nope. Have a bag. We keep bags on the rig, and then they also have bags down at the park. If we're ever in a pinch and we forgot our bag and they ran out, one of us stays with the dogs, the other one goes back to get a bag. I know that's a scenario that only works with two people, but sometimes you have to go back. That's part of it. So please pick up after your dogs. And this actually is not the last topic. There's one more. Now that we're all amped up and on my soapbox, we're going to stay here for a second. So please don't let your dogs just run up to any other dogs.
Oh, that's a good point.
And just the number one thing we always hear, and we hear it all the time, oh, my dog's friendly. Sometimes it's not about your dog. Sometimes it's my dog's problem.
Well, right. And like when we first had Mishka,
Right.
she had a lot of sensory issues. And so a
That's one way
dog
to put it.
running up to her was very aggressive
Right.
in her eyes, you know.
And she would get defensive.
She absolutely would. And she, if you see us, she still guards me to an extent.
Oh, yeah.
So even if your dog is friendly, she saw it as a threat to me because
Right.
it wasn't under control.
So just because your dog's friendly, which half the time people say that and their dogs aren't actually friendly.
That's just their excuse for not having control.
Right. And so they run up and say, oh, my dog's friendly. But it doesn't matter. Like my dog might be trained in a different way that you don't understand. And so always ask for permission. You're really good about when we're on walks or something like with people, like don't just walk up to my dogs.
The same goes for kids. Don't let your kids run up to dogs they don't know.
Right. And you always like, you'll intercept them and they'll look at you like they're funny. I'm like, ask. And to be honest, if they ran up and then they asked, typically you say no. But if they come up and say, do you mind if I pet your dog? then it's sure, but let's let her sniff you first. And it's the proper way to allow that to happen, not the spaz monkey coming at them. And so many times, I'm probably the one thing that drives me up a wall faster than even dog poop is when small dog owners say, oh, my dog's friendly, or they complain because the big dog hurt their little dog. What they left out was how their little dog yapped and ran up to the feet of this big dog and like bit his legs until he finally couldn't take it anymore. Small dogs can be just as aggressive as big dogs. And everybody has to get along. So take control, take ownership over your animal and train them properly. If you don't know how, take them to someone that does.
And as a failsafe, ask. Always ask, can I pet your dog? Can we do this? Can we do that? So we have a good friend and neighbor who has a husky that I love, and I go love on him all the time. I still ask him. He was out the other night, and I said, hey, can I pet on Helic? I haven't seen him in a long time. And he said, no, he had a little wound on his head, like a wart that had been removed, and they were working on it. Anyways, and so he was like, he's kind of in a little bit of pain, and so we'd rather, maybe not this time.
Right.
Perfectly fine. Ricky's one of our good friends, and we've loved on that dog. We know that he's very friendly, but that was situational.
Yeah, and that's understand the situation. It comes back. A lot of these topics we talk about all kind of come back on top of each other of understand your situation, take ownership over your pet, and don't just assume things. Ask questions before you start thinking about one thing or another. So,
but to turn the mood up, yes, we have a wonderful time. The dogs go... Oh, that's a good point that we didn't talk about, actually. Not all trails are dog friendly.
Oh, yeah, we didn't talk about hiking.
And so whenever you go out and about, just kind of double check that. And especially a lot of the national parks, we couldn't take the dogs.
Well, yeah, in fact, most national parks, you can't take the dogs. There's very few that actually allow dogs on trails. You can take them into camping areas, but again, verify.
Exactly, because in the Smokies, I think there were only 2 dog-friendly trails in the whole thing.
And I believe of the 2 or 3 parks, only 1 was pet-friendly.
Right.
The other 2 were not. And so, yeah, just like you would check your size, make sure you understand what you're getting into with the pupperdoos.
Mm-hmm. So. But yes, we have a lot of fun. They keep us active. They keep us on our toes, that's for sure. And it's enjoyable watching them enjoy new environments.
Well, and I was going to say, at the end of the day, yes, it is extra work in the RV. They don't smell great all the time, and you have to find pet washes, like at Tractor Supply, by the way, quick tip. And you have to go out of your way to want them to be there. But at the same time, too, they can enhance the experience 100 times over.
And you're doing right by them. You're taking them in like Mishka was a rescue. Our first dog was a rescue, too.
Yep. So most of our dogs, half of our dogs have been rescues.
All right. I can't think of anything else. What about you?
That is going to do it for us. So do me a quick favor. If you are listening to this on your favorite podcast platform, if you could please ever be so gracious to take your time and rate and review us. That's how we get this pushed out. We're seeing a lot of great feedback from the video version of these on YouTube, but I really want to grow the audio side of this too. So if you are watching this on YouTube and maybe you think they're a little long for your watching pleasure, as I could understand why, grab us on Spotify, Apple, really all of them. You can always check out millersinmotion.com, and there's a podcast link, and it'll have links to every single distribution platform that we are on, which is a lot of.
Maybe they just like looking at you.
Maybe, but I also understand I'd rather them listen to it for 45 minutes than watch it for 10. So don't forget to check us out there, rate and review us. Also, we will put down in the show notes or the description, depending on where you're seeing this, all the links to the things that we've talked about today, and hopefully that helps. If you do have questions for us, you can shoot us a note on the comment section of YouTube, or you can go to the website and hit contact us, and it'll shoot us an actual email. That was a lot.
That was a lot. Good job.
Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you next week. Safe travels.